Hey everyone, welcome back to the Yogi Misfit Sessions. My name is Danni Pomplun and I am your host. So here it goes, October, which means like only 2 more months left in the year, which is kind of insane to me. But yet here we are. I'm just getting back home and settled in San Francisco from this meditation training. So there was like a lot of reflections and a lot of changes and just a lot of things that kind of came up. I always get reminded how fall, makes us kind of turn inward. Obviously it's cold, so we got to bundle up and get warm, but it was a really great experience. And I'm really glad I got to do it. And I get to share all the yummy stuff I learned with everyone soon. So today's session 92, and today was full-on man crush session. I had Brian Carew on the show, and he's an incredible human being. We started following each other online on Instagram, and then come to find out we had some like mutual people that we knew, and I just wanted to really reach out to him. The stuff that he posts is super amazing. He tends to have conversations that a lot of people don't want to have in the masculine world. He talks a lot about just how it is to have body image as a male, and how sometimes for like anyone would be not allowed to talk about it, but it tends to be a thing that in the male community that I see that also doesn't really happen. So it's really cool to get into it with him. He's such a great soul, such a beautiful human being. I'm so excited to have him on the show today. Just before I dive into the show, I've been saying it over the last few podcasts, but I officially now have two spots rather to my Mexico New Year's retreat with Rocky Heron. So it's going to go quick. If anyone wants to sign up, you can check out my website or the link below in the notes. And if you love the show, don't forget to support the show. So you can check out Donor Box and leave a charitable donation for the show so that we can keep the show going on and on and on. Or you can leave a review on iTunes. That's the best way to really help the show spread to friends and family and all the people that we love and care about. Without further ado, here goes episode or session 92. So Brian, like I was saying just before we hit the record button, I feel like I know you. How did we get connected on Instagram? Like, how did that happen? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure it's kind of similar to other connections, like our worlds or the people involved in our worlds were, similar. And then we may have came across each other's page. But one of us, maybe it was you or me, sent each other a DM, and it's just like a DM of appreciation, like, yo, I like what you're doing. Seems dope. Yeah. And then we kind of just went from there.
For all the shit I talk about Instagram, and I talk a lot of shit about Instagram. I talk a lot of shit about Instagram. It is actually like some of my really good, one of my best girlfriends where I'm now friends, with because of Instagram, and it's like, I get to meet these really, really, really awesome people. I think when I took away the actual, trying to the hustle of Instagram and made it more just like, whatever, I'm just going to go do my thing. I actually, that's what it is. When I started to less goal oriented or orient Instagram and make it more just like, this is fun. And this is kind of like, I wouldn't call it passion, but like, it's just a good time. I actually started to make really good friends, and I don't know. Anyway, I'm just super stoked that the platform is there, and that I've got to connect with amazing people like you on there. Because I say this all the time, but I'm like a huge cheerleader on my end for everything that you do and everything that you speak about and your journey in itself. It's really cool to watch.
Thanks a lot, man. And I really do agree. There's a huge parallel for me I see Instagram as like a tool, and it's like anything, like nothing's really inherently good or bad, but it's how you use it. And I've seen it as this potential energy, and it's that potential only becomes like really valuable when you do the real life work. And that's been part of my mission, is like, okay, like how can I make these online connections real life connections, and how can I use this as a means to leverage providing value and learning and growing, and I think if you do that, it's such a beautiful world, man. Like yourself, I've met amazing friends, lovers, people that I would otherwise wish I had in my life if it wasn't for Instagram.
Yeah, I want to correct one thing that you said about, things being good and bad, with the exception of olives. Those things are fucking awful. And they're bad. Yeah. There's no good about fight me, people. Fight me.
Yeah, come at me, bro.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's so cool. I mean, I'm thinking in my head, like just recently in the last couple of weeks, I've hung out with a couple of Instagram friends then, I don't know. Anyway, but it's just, I'm glad to have you on the show. And I, I was just saying too, like, there's so many things I want to talk to you about. Like, I feel like we should probably do a few more episodes at some point.
I'd love to, man. I just want to say thanks for having me and for like being, a positive light and encouragement. It's like, it's beautiful and so well received. It's really, really nice.
On today's episode, Brian and Danni just love on each other the entire time. You're awesome. You're awesome. Yeah, it's I mean, I love Instagram and I fucking love podcasting because people get to hit this right now. Like, you get to hear our passion. You get to hear who we are. It tells you a little more about the story. It puts more to the pictures, and it's a great, honestly, I started the podcast just because there was a bunch of cool people in the world that I wanted to talk to. So
see, I think that's awesome, man. And it's like, I have similar desires and intention, and actually just hearing that is so cool, because looking at the way you set up your podcast and like getting involved in the information, I was like, oh man, this guy's like, he's got all this set up so well. And then you're just like, yeah, I just want to talk to cool people. I'm like, oh, that's what, oh, sweet. It can just be like that. Awesome.
Yeah. I just want to have cool conversations with these people who I think are really awesome. And, I've followed their stuff, or, something that they've said has sparked my interest, and why not? Like,
Yeah, totally. And there is like a vibration that comes out, and you get to kind of like peek behind the veil when you have these conversations with people. And it just shows that like, hey, we're just people, like, we may have a platform or have a cool practice or whatever it is we're sharing, but like, we're just humans, trying to share that.
I mean, I'm definitely above everyone else, though, so.
Yeah, I'm a yogi. Okay.
Right. Exactly. So innately, I'm better than.
Yeah.
I have followers. Okay.
Yeah. I'm important.
Yeah, I am important.
let it be known.
Oh man. All right. So all bullshit aside, I love so hard, Brian, one, that you ride a motorcycle, but two, because I do too.
Oh yeah.
But two, your story and the way that you share. Let me just say this. I don't want to take away from people sharing their stories, but I do find a lot that there's not a lot of men talking about their body issues. There are not a lot of both queer and straight and, everything else in between. I assume that it's like, you're a guy, you don't talk about your feelings, and we've got this like this unhealthy relationship to the masculinity sometimes and what it's supposed to be. And I over and over have been blown away. A couple of friends of mine actually have talked about some of your posts when you talk about your body, and when you share about your body, and when you share about what you've gone through, in your body dysmorphia, in, your bulimia. And it's one, it's super inspiring. And two, a thing that I always mention a lot is like these, I talk a lot about my drug use. I talk a lot about like, me being I was a disaster, and how that's okay. We just need to normalize that conversation and take the shame out of it. So I want to talk to you about your journey. And I know movement has been a part of your healing.
Yeah, most definitely. And I agree completely. It's, men, I think we hold shame in not appearing to be strong, and then showing those struggles, then we associate that with being shameful. And then it's just a perpetuating cycle of not sharing. And yeah, I'm fortunate enough that at a young age, I realized that harboring connection is through vulnerability, and then actually being vulnerable is very, very courageous. And yeah, I realized like I was sharing prior to like the body stuff and eating disorders. I was sharing things, and people would reach out in comments and DM and just tell me like, this is helping me. This is improving my life. It's a capacity to both receive the information from people that what I'm sharing is helping them is such a win-win, because like they're feeling empowered and I'm feeling empowered. And so I just felt like being raw and authentic about that. It shows people that you can share yourself, and also that it's, like you said, it's normalizing. Like a lot of people struggle with it, especially men, body images and wanting to look a certain way. Mm-hmm. And, when I share that with them, they're like, oh man, like, yeah, I definitely struggle with that. And wasn't sure if other men struggle with that very much. And
right.
So yeah, it's been really cool.
I didn't realize, I guess maybe I've had the privilege of not having to ever, worry about that or have that in my life. And it wasn't until I started climbing a ton, and it wasn't until I really started to get into the climbing community that I realized that it was even a thing, that guys were, starving themselves, or, the other way around, so that they could climb better and so that they can it's just like, to me, it was such a different world. I was like, wait, what? Like, why would you do that, or how? Or like, I just didn't understand it.
Totally.
And then, as I, actually sat down and listened, I started to understand, like, okay, there's more to this than just the surface level.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Is most people are pretty compassionate, and I wouldn't say the people who don't understand aren't compassionate necessarily, just of not understanding. But people have had in-person connections mostly, where people are like, really, like you have body dysmorphia, or you binge eat or throw up, like, because you're like, how could you have any issues with food? Like you're in you're in good shape, But that's the thing. It's something in your mind. Like for me, at a young age, I started weightlifting, and I became like hyper obsessed with aesthetics. And I've never been like a very like bulky person, or bulky man. Like it's taken me a long time to build muscle and like get to this physique.
Yeah.
And this became like to the point where you just don't ever see yourself in that light. And that formed for me unhealthy eating habits, very unhealthy relationship with food, to the point where it's like I was either always worried about what I was eating, or just concerned about what I was eating and thinking about everything that was going in. And then, then that kind of eventually gets to a boiling point where you're just like, like I need to just relax, and relaxing got associated with just large consumptions of food.
When did it start? Or like, what was, if you want to dive into it, like, has it been something that was in recent years, or was it in your younger years, or?
Well, yeah, I've looked into it really deeply, and I'm also very grateful for this. It's like my ability to introspect, and I've come to realize it started very early on, like, and it grew over the years. And it definitely started with, probably when I was late teens, and I started fasting a long time ago, like before it was like a thing. Mm-hmm. Like I was probably intermittent fasting, or I guess the more appropriate term now is like time restricted eating, around like 19 or 18. So I was doing that and tracking macros, and I was just very hyper focused on what I was eating in order to achieve aesthetics. And then the whole kind of like weightlifting community has condoned and adopted like cheat days. So I'd have like these cheat days, and I had one, or I still have this friend, my friend Josh, very, very close, but we would kind of almost potentiate or enable each other to turn a cheat day into like just like a binge eating fest. And that kind of just became routine. It was like could kind of eat pretty healthily or pretty consistently, but then always waiting for the next time I could just destroy anything in my path, or just get completely processed and nasty foods.
Right.
But I think the turning point for me was so my relationship with cannabis being kind of like a relaxing, like to myself type of activity. And then I started eating a lot of food while I was, enjoying cannabis. And then it became like an isolated event. I'd isolate myself, I'd get high, I'd eat food. And then in that setting, it just like things blew wide open, and I would go into like these, pockets of like a downward spiral. And so that's kind of like where it became more of an issue.
Do you feel like movement was a big part? I mean, I guess not. Do you feel it definitely was? What and when did, because the asana came first? Yeah, that was your first like practice, right?
Yeah, asana was my first practice. It was my first kind of opening up to moving more freely in my body and with breath, and just having like a mindfulness practice towards physicality.
Right. How did it integrate in during the time of your binge eating and whatnot, and how did you, I guess, use it as a tool? When I found asana, it was like when I was like at the height of my drug use. I mean, I was drinking like a fish, and I was ripping through as much cocaine as I could, and it wasn't until I had, for me, it was like the community around yoga that really allowed me to have these like really taboo conversations, but also like I'd realized I'd never been connected to my body. Like I'd never really actually sat there and felt what my leg felt like to be turned on, or my arm, or any of that. And to have that experience gave me more mental capacity to want to like dig deeper,
Definitely. And that's a great point. And I think it definitely touches on where I was going to go with it, in that if it weren't for yoga and mindfulness and my movement practice, I don't think I would have had that internal locus of control and faith in myself that I could, or move beyond this. Like that's what got me through some days, is I would, if I would binge, or I would have an episode the next morning, I'd I'd be like, you know what, it's, yeah, you fell into that again, but you can come back. You can always come back. And practice was always like that for me too. So I could use that mentality of like, maybe today it didn't work out as well as I thought, or maybe I quote unquote failed based on my expectations, but I always had faith that I was going to work it out. And that definitely was, that was anchored in my movement and yoga practice. Like it gave me that sovereign sense, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It gave you like permission to like, like you said earlier, take the veils off.
Yeah, or something just came to mind too with yoga and movement. You start to like embody the sense of like the joy is in the process, and the joy is in seeing that there is something to be learned in all of the seemingly good and bad. And I really, like, at the worst time was probably about 2017, like mid 2017 to like the start of like 2018. This year's been pretty good. But during that time, I was just in my head, I was like, this is just some work that you're doing. And it's just like, you haven't seen, like, really been willing to witness that and like face that work. And now it's just right in front of your face. So as much as it was very painful and it was very hard, I was also like, I'm going to see this as an opportunity to grow stronger, and then also to be able to connect with people more, which always excites me. I'm like, if I go through something that is extremely difficult, now I have a well that's deeper for connection and for understanding others.
Yeah. Do you have a community now of maybe other men or women or whoever they may be with body issues and like I would equate it to Sangha, that you guys can support one another and care for one another and communicate with one another?
Yeah, I definitely do. Part of my journey in getting past this and connecting more deeply is to share myself and my struggles with like those I love or those who I move with. And it's crazy how many people I'm like, yeah, I've really been struggling with bulimia or that's something that's come up. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, someone else is like, yeah, I struggle with eating as well, or I feel like I've had a poor relationship with food, and it just allows us to connect more deeply. And I've had even, like one of my partners, Lena, right now, it's really helped for me to tell her like, oh, I'm really feeling the urge to like need to binge right now, or like knowing that I can go to people and not feel shameful about it has been a huge help.
I mean, there's got to be some like the being able to just relate to somebody, you know what I mean? To almost have like not validation that you're not the only one out there, you know what I mean? But also like you get it, like it's nice to be seen and heard in that.
Yeah, exactly. And that I'll speak on my behalf and just say that it's my experience, but I feel people can relate to this in that when you feel shame or you feel like there's a part of you that is like, what you're just very shamed by, bringing that out is like, you're so worried it's not going to be accepted. You're like, oh, no one's going to, like, people are going to be like, whoa, like that's bad, or like that's negative, and like, why would you bring that up? But when you share like the darkest, deepest, or like unsure self of yourself, and then that you're accepted and you're seen and received with love, it just teaches you like, wow, that was like my mind, contorting this and trying to kind of like either self-sabotage or create this reality which is not real. So it's a powerful lesson to have a few people you can reach out to share like, hey, I just need to be able to be received in this space where I feel like I'm not accepting myself.
And also too, like, when you call that shit out in your head, it no longer, owns you. It has a name, and it makes it a little more tangible for you to approach or to, work with, or to, I always like to use the analogy, like a lot of times the stuff that comes up and things that triggers us, it can't, and I'm obviously generalizing this, but a lot of it's just like a part of ourselves that wants to be seen and heard, and I always refer to it as like for me, a lot of the stuff. And again, like you said, speaking of my experience, it was the 5-year-old little boy that didn't get enough attention, that wasn't held, that wasn't loved, whatever. And it's almost calling that out in yourself and being like, hey, I see you, I got you, let's do this thing together and not fight one another. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And I love that you brought in kind of like speaking almost a bit about the inner child, because I believe we all form images or ways of living based on our our childhood, and in that mindset we don't really know how to handle certain information. So I know my isolating tendencies were formed as a child, because when I was a kid, like my dad left, and my brother and I and my mom were left, and I was basically like, I took on this role of being mediator and household like energetic grounder. So I was always like, yeah, I need to be there for everyone. So there's not space for me to, be emotionally vulnerable. Like I have to be sound. I have to be a rock. So then I did find spaces and times in isolation to do that. And then, that's why I would like isolate myself and binge eat, because I was like, this is just, no one needs to know about this. This is not a weight I'll ever put on anyone else.
Because you got to hold space for everybody else. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Huh. How is movement affecting you now? How is it shifting and changing you now? And I mean, not just you as Brian, but also you as the inner child.
It's been very expansive and empowering, because I'd say in the past couple of years, I really struggled with the idea of like, how can I, pursue all the movements I want to pursue, being like contemporary dance, body weight strength training, inversions, arm balancing, asana. I just thought, I was like, you're being irresponsible by wanting to pursue all these things. But then I just decided and had faith. I was like, I don't exactly know how I'm going to, but I'm going to practice all of these things, and I'm going to make it work. And as I started doing that, lo and behold, and this happens, I think it keeps happening. It's like, I can do it. I just have to have that faith. So it's been really showing me that I'm capable of much more than I thought. And then, that's just been empowering my ability to coach as well, because I can see that for my clients and know that they can achieve, a specified way of moving or training or exercising, if you will. So. Yeah,
that's so interesting. I would never, that doesn't even seem like I would ever question that. Like I could, if you were to tell me just to do yoga for the rest of my life, I'd be like, no, like absolutely not. I have to dance. I like, there's no way around it. Like the way that when I dance, it's my expression of telling the people around me and even the people I don't know around me, the way that I show love. And it's the way that it's not necessarily all for me. It's pretty much, I'm giving when I dance,
Totally.
And like when I rock climb, that's like for my inner child. Like when I rock climb, there's no working out in rock climb. You're just fucking climbing shit and it's awesome, and then sometimes you fall and it's super scary and fun. And then you just like go right back up and you're like so pumped up afterwards. And then, the asana for me is more like the grounding part. And then, I play around sometimes with, I don't know. I could never, oh man, to try to put it into one box and question it. There's no way in hell. I would go insane.
Yeah. You say it so well, man. And it's true. And I think what we're speaking on here, what we're touching on is that, today's paradigm or like look upon exercise and fitness can be very like isolated and specific, or task orientated, but that sense of play, that sense of like, I'm going to like dancing, I'm going to go out there and just move my body. It's like you tap into like our primal knowledge and it's so like emotionally riveting and enriching to have various movement practices or various pursuits, or to be like, yeah, I'm gonna play with this. I'm gonna, see what this is like. And that's what the movement practice has been like for me. And it's allowed me to enjoy the process so much more. And it's allowed me to both like strive for excellence in my movements, but also be non-attached, which I understood theoretically, but now I feel like it's in my body. Like that's such a beautiful feeling.
When you start to put a goal towards it, there are a lot of like professionally trained people that a lot of it is goal oriented. I feel like it's almost like chasing the high, and then the high starts to come down. And what do? You try to chase the high again. So you push versus just explore. It's the sense of like when you are a child, it's the sense of wonder and it's the sense of curiosity and it's the sense of awe and it's the sense of approaching it like brand new again and again and again. There's this sutra that I read. It's so funny. I just read it last night from the Radiant Sutras, but it talks about, it talks about wander to wander. It says wander to wander. I'm going to butcher this, but it says wander to wander. And then it talks about like dance until you drop. And then when you drop down, feel the energy swirling around you. And you become this body of like ecstasy, of like what's innately what's in us, exactly what you just said, that primal thing. But like the energy is there and it wants to do the thing. We just hold ourselves back from doing the thing. Yeah.
Dude, that's totally right. And you're reminding me of something that Osho says in meditations about like you move the body and you get it excited and then you sit in that. And then once the body's kind of been like satisfied in its movements and, creating the storm, it's like a storm, like it's just the calmest afterwards. You sit in all of that and you're just like, my goodness, like it allows you to be so much more grounded and feel every little bit of yourself. And there's like, I don't know exactly the word for it, but that maybe like the yoga high or whatever that people describe it. You just feel like you have done yourself an immense service and that like to me communicates, like when I move, I'm communicating to my emotional sense, to my spiritual sense, and I'm like opening, the doors and exploring the containers of that through movement.
I have to tell you this, it's not even like low key, but full on, I totally, and maybe I'm projecting, but felt your joy. And it actually, later on that day, I actually ended up doing the same thing. But you posted the video when the Diplo Charlie, what's her name? Charlie XCX or whatever her name is.
Oh, yeah.
That song is like the Spice Girls remix or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you did this video and you were dancing. And as I was watching this on Instagram, I immediately had this big shit-eating grin on my face. And like, as you were moving, I started like getting excited in my body, and like I was just like super like I felt like I was dancing. Does that make sense? Like I was like, this is the shit that I love to do, and he's in it right now. So what did I do? I pulled up the song on Spotify after and just like played it in my room and did the same shit. I just like let go. So thank you for sometimes you don't really know what effect you have, right? You just got to do it, but you totally inspired and sparked pure joy in my soul because of that.
Dude, and that's amazing. It's such a win, and that's I think that's another thing. Like for me now, I could look at it like, did I do the moves properly? Like, did it sync with the music? But it's like I tapped into that and let go and just moved in a way that felt enriching, and then from that, like that moved on to you, like that wave met you, and then so that makes me think like how can we define winning so that it's not about, like doing the handstand or doing the dance routine perfectly. It's about embodying an energetic sense throughout your day and throughout your life, because like you mentioned before, it's like you get the goal, but that's static. And when you get there, you're just going to kind of, I think most people feel like, okay, I got here and like, what's the next thing? But if winning for you is like tapping into flow or like finding grace in what you do or like providing value, it's like that is infinite, and that can be applied to all of the goals that you're achieving and continue to want to achieve. So that's kind of how I see it. I'm like, oh, people are, they got moved by my movements, or like I just let completely go and people are like captivated by it. I'm like, sweet, that is the win. It doesn't really matter about particularly what happened, if you know what I mean.
You've 100%, you can feel that, and you could see that in people. You could feel that in people. It's it's a it's true. I mean, in case anyone listening to the show, like we forget, you guys are just vibrating, all of you. Everyone has electricity going through their body. Adults can't comprehend this. So we have to make toys where we have to hold hands, and then there's the stick in the middle that lights up. It's just, that's how it works. And when people say, I don't know if you know this, Brian, but when people say like, oh, I'm not feeling that person's vibe, right? Or I am feeling that person's vibe. It is literally the electrical pulse that goes through your heart that is filtered through your fat lipids, and your fat lipids talk to another person's fat lipids, and they can tell whether they vibe or not. This is true story. So literally like that connection, right? And you can feel that coming from another person, whether near or far, or whatever it is, I mean, we can spiral into that, but like you doing your thing for me, like I felt that, and that made me feel something. And I'm sure I left, my home that day and probably was like in a jazzed mood, and, probably had another effect on like 2, 3, 4, 10. You could have affected like 100 million people that day. You didn't even know it.
And that, dude, I love that you mentioned that, because it's like, it is a real thing. It's a way we're always communicating. And I'm glad that, with the science that we have now and the tools that we're starting to be able to measure these things, it's shedding light on that for the people who need that information. But I think when you tap into it, you just know it. It's real. Like I communicate with people, and sharing myself in that way, like you've described. It's just like we're always sharing that. And when you believe that, when you start to bring that into your life, you can just like tap into other people's energy. And then for me, I can be like, okay, like I'm vibing with this person. The energy's on. So like, let's invest time with each other. Let's help each other grow. And then if the vibe isn't there, it's like, I can still love that person for who they are, but I just know it's like, hey, we're just not on the same frequency. And like, it offers more clarity upon like who your tribe is and who you need to, or feel like you should invest yourself into. And that's great. I think it makes life more swimmingly, more fruitful.
I agree, man. I 100%. Yes, and more yes.
All the yeses, man.
I feel like we seriously, man, we need to do a couple spin-off shows. Like we've touched on so many things just really lightly, and I feel like me and you could just go all in.
For sure, man. There's so many things. Like I'm kind of like a citizen scientist when it comes to nutrition, and I love to you may know or may not know, like I'm very into like animal source foods, or like kind of like a carnivore diet, but my aim has been to be more inclusive about it. So that's something I'd love to speak on, because I think all of us, whether plant-based or vegetarian or carnivore or keto or whatever, our aim is health and thriving. And I think people forget that. So I mean, that's a great subject. There's so many things to talk about: movement and relationships. Like I'm an open relationships and polyamory, and kind of have like almost a 4-person relationship going on right now, like 2 men, myself, and 2 women. And there's so many things and worlds we could dive into.
Yeah, same. I've got that relationship. It's me, myself, and I.
Yeah, right. And that too, the relationship with ourself, man. Like that's been, coming back to eating disorders. It's like having a relationship with yourself, having those times where it's like, I'm gonna hang out with me, and I'm gonna like enjoy me, and like get to know like what is it that I need to feel loved, and like what is it that I need to feel enriched in life, like. Sometimes we're just so focused on the external, like what we should do or what is going to make me into that best human. But it's like, man, like you gotta look inwards for that kind of stuff. You gotta really ask yourself and believe it's not selfish. Because like when you are at your best, when you know yourself best, then you are giving the best to the world, and it's really actually more selfless, I think.
Yeah, it's inquiring,
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to tell people, like, we can inquire about the body first. You start from the outside and you work your way in. You can inquire about the body first, and then maybe that gives you permission to go a little bit deeper. And then maybe that gives you permission to go a little bit deeper. And then that gives you permission to go a little bit deeper after that.
Yeah. The layers are so deep. And after you pull back one layer, there's always just more to be uncovered.
The life of a seeker.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Brian, there's so much wisdom in today's show, man. Like I'm so stoked that I get to talk to you, and big shout out to our buddy Shelby for just saying great things about you. And I'm really, really, really pumped that we get to connect, and we're definitely getting you back on the show 100%, man, for sure.
Awesome, man. Yeah, Shelby's amazing. I appreciate the kind words he said to you, and just thanks for your interest and letting me know like authentically how I've affected you and making this connection. It's like I live for this kind of stuff, man. I live for connecting with other humans and being able to share our journey. So the work you're doing is great. And thank you for the effort, presence, and time you're putting into this.
Absolutely. And I'll say it again. You doing your thing gave me permission to do my thing. So keep like literally you doing your thing and seeing that, I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I like to do that shit too. I should remind myself that.
Oh man, my hand is on my heart. And that I kind of like, thank you. Like I feel that. And it's like, I'm gonna go out today and just like send out these vibes, man. It's gonna be beautiful.
The last 5 minutes of the show, everybody, is no, Brian, you're the best.
Yeah, coming back, we gotta started from there. We gotta come back to the same page.
It's the theme sandwich.
Yeah, themes. Oh, I love it, man. Damn, on that note, we do have to meet sometime and hang out, because if this is how we're in a conversation, damn, it's gonna be explosive in person.
I'm in. Like, sign me up. I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, till the next Yogi Misfit sessions, this is Danny and Brian saying peace out.
Peace.